people ask me, now I've heard different things, how deep is it where we're crossing the ferry? What's the deepest? And I heard it used to be a lot different in depth.
Well, with their modern technology, with their fish finders and depth finders and that type of thing, we go from starting out at Stow and going towards Bemus. It's shallow on that side of the lake for more than halfway across. And you got 4 or 5 feet of water. This is what the people worry, what happens if the ferry sinks? Well, if a ferry sinks, it goes to the bottom. And you can stand on the ferry more than halfway across and won't be in water much over your knees. But the other way, you can have, I've been told some of them say 12 feet, but a lot of them say 10, 11 feet is what it is on the Bemus side. Of course, that changes, and we notice that tremendously on the lake, that the water will raise more than a foot with a 2.5 to 3 inch rain. There's 5 creeks streams running into Chautauqua Lake that'll put more water in a 24-hour period than what the outlet will take out. We're a reservoir is what we are, and it goes up and down tremendously, and that was one of the things in building the ferry. We got to raise and lower them ramps to get cars or any vehicle off and on. It's kind of a challenge to keep the thing going on a level keel with the water raising and lowering so much.
I did learn that when I first started running this year. The first weekend, I had quite a drop down on the gate for them, and I didn't know how to fix it. Most everybody was out of town for Memorial Day, but people were really good. You know, they just told them to take it easy, and they listen. Most people listen. You get 1 or 2 people that are like, you know.
As far as I know, you're talking about the ferry sinking. The ferry has sunk twice. Fortunately, both times it was in the dock at Stow, where it just sinks down and the decks on the Stow end don't even go under the water. Just the outer ones go under the water. The first time it sank was in 1943. Alton died in 42. And Gerald, his son, ran it for the rest of that year. But for some reason or other, the next spring, the ferry was sunk, and he couldn't run it. And he didn't know what happened. It must have been an accident. Well, I don't know. 60 tons, and you're going to sink it by accident? Yeah. Anyhow, the story is that what Gerald wanted to do, and what he did, was go to Erie, Pennsylvania and get a good paying wartime job. You can't blame him. He didn't want to pick up nickels and dimes off the ferry. So that's the year that the county bought it, and they sandbagged it and got it floating again. The second time it sank was in '94, I believe. Supposedly it got caught in the ice.
Well, that's what they said. The lake was low in the spring, and it froze in the bottom of the lake, the end on the Stow side. And then we had the spring thaw, and the water run in, and the ferry was on the bottom, and it flooded, is what it done. And when it flooded, the tanks,
I think
the air vents filled the tanks with water, and it sunk, and the deck floated off. And now
everything floated off.
Well,
lost the houses, and there was a real mess. People were bringing bits and pieces back of the deck for weeks after that. It was, but
how'd you guys get it back up?
Pumped it out.
Yeah,
thanks to the fire company.
Fire department. They worked out a unique thing with 55-gallon drum with both ends cut out, and they put them over those the holes there,
Manholes.
in manholes, and then they'd pump one out, and so the water wouldn't rush in, and then they'd pump another one out, and by the time they got a couple pumped out, why, then it was up far enough so they could just pump the others out.
Really?
Using the 55-gallon drum. But I don't buy this business of freezing to the bottom, as I think somebody forgot to pump out the tanks. That's
Well,
what it reminded too.
It's one of the things we do even now. You figure in the wintertime, the weight of the snow in the ice on the ferry, the wave action splashes, and we got to watch it pretty close and keep the ice off of it, because the ice alone and the weight of the snow that comes on will sink the ferry.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. The weight on the top is greater than the buoyancy of it. And it's just one of the trials and tribbles of
What you're saying is the ferry needs constant care. You have to take care of it. You can't ignore it in the winter time
You
or
just
any
dock
other
it
time.
at the end of the season and
Yeah.
come back and.
You don't
Here
walk
we
away
go.
from it. You put it to bed like you do. You got to take care of it like any business, and
Yeah,
it's
and
really been a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun, met a lot of people. But to get back into the history of it is that Art started on it there is that when the county took it over because of the changing in times, that it was a way to save 28 miles. And during the war, 28 miles in the cost of gasoline and gasoline rationing, the ferry was run.
Rationed, yeah.
And one of the things is that the last year that the ferry run before the bridge, according to my figures, maybe Art's got some others, we run 37,000 cars, I believe, across. Isn't that the
Yeah,
figure?
that's about
37,000 plus cars across the ferry. Now we can put 9 cars on the ferry. And the ferry we got today that we're running was made in 1927. Correct me if I'm wrong.
27, 28, right
20
in
is
there,
yeah, in that period.
Hey,
And that would put 9 cars or the equivalent in milk trucks, mail trucks. They run the ferry from ice out until ice in, and it was run literally from 6 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night. And
well, I don't want to. Let me put this in. It was a 1928 ferry that Alton built. Now, Alton was a boat builder. He had something to do with the building of the city of Jamestown, the city of Buffalo, and the city of Cleveland. Anyhow, they built this one down in Jamestown, and that was 1928. It's basically the ferry we have today, but it had the engine in the center and would only carry 6 cars. Now, when the county took over, that was the ferry. They ran it as it was for about 3 years, but then they took the whole thing apart and took out the middle cable, the drive cable, moved the engine to the outrigger on the north side, put paddle wheels on. So the whole thing, and that basically is the ferry that we have today. To say it's basically the ferry we have since 1928 is like me talking about my grandfather's axe. I have my grandfather's axe. We replaced the handle 3 times and the head twice, but it's still my grandfather's axe. They added pontoons. They did all kinds of things to it. But I'm sure some of the steel in that ferry goes back to at least 1928, if not beyond.
Graves Welding in Jamestown is where that was made, or
right.
I should say fabricated, and they've had different changes in it, but basically it's the same shape in that.
Hey guys, we're public access